Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to cover Unit 3, so Unit 1, 2, 3, and that is, no, I think it's Unit 4 actually, and so Unit 4 is the market structures, so the four main market structures out there in economics. And so yeah, that's all we're going to cover today in this video. Today I hopefully am a bit shorter. Last video was like 40 minutes, so let's try to aim for something a little more straight to the point and concise. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much time, so let's go straight into our review. So I have one note. I will be driving all the notes here. So yes, Unit 4 is comprised of market structures, the four main market structures out there in economics. So let's get it right here. There are four market structures in economics. There is the perfect competition, the monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. Each market has their own unique characteristics, and they all operate very differently from each other. However, some might share certain characteristics, but they're all very unique. And so, one end of this line, we're going to have perfect competition. And so this is the first one for today. We're going to cover everything, but this is the first one. And the other end, it is monopolies. So it starts off with and it goes in decreasing order. So as you decrease the amount of firms, it starts to become more of a monopoly. So in a monopoly, just to give you a very, very, very brief introduction, it is one firm who provides a good and service in the market. You could think of utilities, your electricity. Typically, there's one firm providing that service in the market. So it's one firm or a single firm. And in between, you're going to have your oligopoly, which is closer to a monopoly. And then you're going to have a monopolistic competition. Okay, so first off, we're going to start with a perfect competition. That is simply a market structure. So why don't I start here? Identical product. Each firm is said to be a price taker. So these, what I'm outlining right now, are assumptions to the model to make us better understand how things work in such a structure. So this is said to be price takers. Or what else is there? Many firms, homogeneous product, price takers. Each firm is said to have a small market share. And is equal to 0 in the long. Okay. So these are the basic assumptions. Why don't we draw an example of a perfectly competitive firm? Okay. So the first starts off with, let's say right here. Okay, so our average total cost curve as such, marginal cost intersects the average total cost at its minimum. That is a mathematical necessity. They are price takers, so their demand is perfectly elastic, and that is shown by horizontal demand curve. So let's say the price is here. This is their demand, which happens to be the marginal revenue, and their average revenue curve. Prices on the Y, quantity on the X. You could also say this is cost for average total cost and whatnot. And so at this point, A, this is called the cost minimizing level of outputs, meaning where marginal cost is equal to the minimum average total cost. This is the lowest per unit average cost that is being produced at, let's say, QF quantity. Okay, and for every firm in any market structure, key thing here is all firms here, they produce their marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So this would apply for the per PC firm. And so they're going to produce right here, where marginal revenue intersects the marginal cost. And this also happens to be the cost minimizing total output. Profit here is equal to 0. Profit is equal to price minus average total cost times quantity. And so since there's no vertical distance between the marginal revenue and the average total cost at QF quantity, there is going to be no profit. So profit is equal to 0 in this case here. Okay. And so there are 3 scenarios in which the PC firm can be in the short run. There is this right now is a scenario where this firm can either be in the short run or the long run. It satisfies the condition that profit is equal to 0 in the long run, so it could be either or. And on this graph here, we're going to show profits, let's say, greater than 0. So you know what? Let's use the same demand curve. Demand is equal to marginal revenue, which is equal to average revenue. And then key thing here is you have to make sure your average total cost is going to be right here. Let's say, for example, marginal cost right there. And where is this firm going to produce? It's going to produce where MR is equal to MC. QF, let's say 1. And so because there's a vertical distance between the marginal revenue curve and the ATC at QF, a positive vertical distance, there is going to be profit, which is shaded in this region here. So if at QF, the average total cost is right around here, which translates to some cost here. And so the firm is receiving these prices here, right? So let's call it P1. And so that revenue or that profit, this is economic profit, it's right here. Okay. And that's pretty much it for this firm in short run. Having positive economic profit. Illustrate another scenario. Okay. Let's assume the same. So this is P1. D equals MR is equal to D. For a firm earning negative economic profit, average total cost should lie above the marginal revenue curve. And as such, cost firms are going to produce where MR is equal to MC right here. There is a vertical distance between price, between the marginal revenue and average total cost. This is a negative distance, so which would imply a negative profit. So I use red to shade in losses. I would say it's economic loss. Economic loss. This is economic profit. Okay, so in the long run, to satisfy one of the assumptions that long run profit has to equal 0, what's going to happen is if we take, for example, this firm earning a profit, this is a short run scenario. And so firms, other firms, not firms currently in the industry, are going to enter in this market because there's profit. And as time goes on, more firms are going to enter, which will drive down the price of the product. And so as prices decrease, profit decreases. And as time keeps going on, as more firms enter, eventually there's going to be a point where that market price is going to be at the minimum average total cost of all firms in the industry. And it is at this point potential firms will stop entering, because if they keep on entering, it will drive down the price below the minimum average total cost, which in that case, they will be earning negative profit. And so they'll stop where price is equal to the minimum average total cost. And so with the current firms in that market, they're all earning profit of equal to zero. And so that is our long run stable equilibrium. The same thing can be said for negative profit. So depending on the shutdown rule, so if the price is above the minimum average variable cost, these firms earning a profit here are going to produce in the short run to cover some of its fixed costs and some of its variable costs, but it will exit, it will kaput in the long run. And so when that happens, essentially this will bring down the prices, and the new market equilibrium price will be at the minimum average total cost. And so this will satisfy our assumption of long run profit of equal to zero. That is pretty much it for a perfect competition. Okay, and a few things you have to make notice of graphically is we've identified profit, we've identified losses. It's important to identify total revenue. So for example, total revenue for here, right, would be the profit box plus total cost, which would be right here, right? That's the cost. And so the summation of this would be total. So this whole box is total revenue. Okay. One thing I did not mention is that this is a constant cost industry, and there's such thing as an increasing cost and a decreasing cost industry. I highly advise that you look into it, because that would take a bit too long. So maybe in the future I'll have a video on that. So why don't we get started? One more thing. So in case here I mentioned that if prices are above the minimum average variable cost, they're going to shut down. I mean, they're going to continue to produce in the short run, but exit in the long run. However, if let's redraw this graph here, instead of the demand curve, it was, what if the demand curve was right here. So firms, the reason in this case here, right here, the market price is below the minimum average variable cost. Firms are going to shut down in the short run. They're not going to produce, they're going to shut down, because if they were to produce, the price at which they're going to sell the good is going to be essentially less than its variable cost, right, of producing that good, and then it still has to cover its fixed cost. Let's take that in. What if the price was above the minimum? Well, what this is additional revenue obtained in the form of the market price. It covers the variable cost, the average variable cost of that unit. Then, because it's above the minimum, it will also cover some of its fixed costs. So in the short run, in this scenario, firms are produced in the short run, exit in the long run. If it's below the minimum average variable cost price, that is, firms are shut down indefinitely. Okay, PC, done. Let's move on to monopolies. So we are right here on this portion of the line. The other spectrum, monopolies. Monopolies, single firm providing a good and service, not many substitutes, if not no substitutes. There's high barriers to entry. One thing I forgot to mention, low barriers to entry. Monopoly. Monopoly will have high levels of barriers, so it's hard to enter this market. Imagine starting your own utility or electricity company. The fixed cost of capital that you need is going to be super, super high, and you might need some sort of government intervention. I'm not too sure. So huge barriers to entry, and to exit. One thing to note, they are a price setter. Because they are the only one providing this market, this good and service, they face its own demand curve, and thus they can charge whatever prices they want in this market. What else is there? And yeah, it's only a single firm. There's a few other assumptions, but these are the main ones. Okay. One more thing I want to add. No substitutes, or no to low substitutes. So consumers in this market, this monopolistic or monopoly market, they can't just go somewhere else to buy this good. So this one's fairly straightforward. The demand is downward sloping. Let me redraw that demand curve. Marginal revenue twice as steep as the demand curve. And the reason why it lies below the demand curve is because if this monopoly wants to charge a higher price to an additional unit, because it cannot price discriminate, it has to lower the price of the previous units. And so that is a loss of revenue. And so the marginal revenue will lie below the demand curve. Marginal cost, nothing crazy. Average total cost, nothing crazy. And so firms produce where MR is equal to MC right here. So let's say it's QF. They're not going to set a price here. They're going to set a price up on a demand curve because they are price setters. And they'll charge here. PM for market price. Let's say this is the cost. No, it's not the cost. Sorry. And the cost of QF units being produced is on the average total cost curve. Let's say that's PATC, and so that profit is going to be right here. Okay. Deadweight loss is going to be right here, this triangle formed. Total revenue, let's use a different color, light blue. Total revenue is here. And you guessed it. Which color should I use? Total cost. It's going to be right here. Green for total cost. Okay. And so, one thing I failed to mention with a perfectly competitive firm is in a perfectly competitive market. So let me draw the graph really quickly. So I'm going to erase some of these assumptions. Okay. So let's say I'm drawing an equivalent market, but instead of it being a monopoly, it is a perfectly competitive market. So this is the market, not the firm. So PC, supply, demand, price, quantity. At the equilibrium, it's called a QT, PT. At the equilibrium, we say that this point is allocatively efficient when this market is in the long run because the price that consumers value the product, PT, is equal to the marginal cost of QF units. So essentially, consumers are valuing the product at the cost of the marginal cost of production. So that is the definition of allocative efficiency, AE for short. So let me write that down. Efficient. And we say that this is also productively efficient because at this intersection, this also corresponds to the minimum average total cost of all the individual perfectly competitive firms producing in the market. So when all these firms are producing at their minimum average total cost, productive efficiency is obtained. So in contrast to the monopoly, a monopoly is not productively efficient because it is not producing where it is. So if I draw a dot here to signify its minimum average total cost, it's not producing there. So it's not productively PE efficient. Nor is it allocatively efficient because marginal cost, price does not equal marginal cost in the market. Price is PM, marginal cost is right around here, right? It's not equal to each other. So monopolies are not productively efficient. Okay. So that is it for monopolies. Very, very, very straightforward. Why don't we move on to what are natural monopolies? It's a monopoly, but it operates in a market where it provides natural resources. So like electricity, I don't know, natural. Mine is drawing blanks right now. Staying home, and all this is. So nothing crazy with a natural monopoly. Same thing, demand, marginal revenue, marginal cost is going to be downward sloping like this. Average total cost is going to be downward sloping like this. And you're probably wondering why. Because these firms benefit from economies of scale. So natural monopolies, again, they benefit from economies of scale because their fixed costs, their capital requirements to operate in that market is so high, they would benefit from producing good in units, which would drive down their cost in the long run. So yes. Am I forgetting something? No, I'm not. So there you go. And one thing I want to note with a natural monopoly is it is ideal to only have one firm. If there is another firm that enters this market, so it shares similar characteristics to a monopoly, but the reason why it's ideal to only have one firm is because if another firm decides to enter that market, that other firm will have to spend as much money, a lot of money on capital requirements to run the natural monopoly. And what ends up happening is there's going to be an under allocation of resources because both firms still produce where MR is equal to MC. And what you will find out is quantity will be under allocated. But first, let's try to figure out this natural monopoly graph. MR is equal to MC, so they're going to produce here at QF. They're going to charge a price PF. Okay. Where demand is equal to MC, this is called the socially optimal price. Or not socially optimal price, the socially optimal point in the economy, and the price corresponding to that would be the socially optimal price. This is called the fair return price. Return point, price point, whatever. And when it comes to government policies, to maximize social benefit, governments would ideally like to set a price at, let's say, let's call this Z. Let's call it T. They would ideally like to set a price Z, but they can't, because if they do, this monopoly, this natural monopoly, is earning a loss right of that vertical distance. And so the firm will shut down. And so the only other point to set that price that's both fair to the natural monopoly and the citizens of whatever this market is to set it at T, the fair return point, because at this point, firms are earning no profit, so zero economic profit, but they're not earning a loss. And at this point, it also corresponds to a much higher consumer surplus compared to, let's say, point Q at a lower quantity. Okay, that's pretty much it. Pretty much it. So that is a natural monopoly. Let's move on. Next is oligopolies. Oligopolies, it's a market structure where there's few firms. Either can provide, they provide differentiated goods or homogeneous. What else is there? They are price setters as well. Barriers to entry is very similar to a monopoly, but the main distinction between this and a monopoly is the sense of interdependence. What they do has an impact on the other firms there. The reason being is because there's 2 to 6 firms, each move that the firm decides to do will impact the other firm's profit or market share. For example, Bell, Rogers, Telus, Fido, whatnot. If one of those players decides to lower the prices on the plans, on their cell phone plans, this will affect the market share of other firms, because then Rogers will gain a bigger market share, which provides them more profit at the expense of less profit from the other companies. This is called interdependence. This is the notion of interdependence, which leads us to the concept of game theory. So game theory is the study of strategic decision making, which is what oligopolies do. Okay, they have to make strategical decisions because their moves have huge impact, and they're not going to make a decision solely on itself. It will make a decision also based on what the other player would do or the other player's best response. Okay, some fields of study of okay. Most popular example taught when first introducing game theory is the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, okay, is a situation where 2 robbers, before they want to rob a bank, so prior to robbing the bank, they agree to their plan, in which if they get caught, they are not going to snitch on each other. Okay, they're not going to snitch. So they decide to rob a bank. They get caught by police. The policemen or women take them to the jail cell, but they separate them and they integrate them. So there's no way for them to communicate. And they provided a few options. You snitch, it's a lesser sentence or even no sentence. But if you both cooperate and you don't snitch, then both of you are going to go to jail. If you both snitch, then you're just going to both go to jail. So when studying these type of games, we construct what's called a payoff matrix. Okay. So we're going to have, let's say, 2 parties stand and Jess. Okay, Stan and Jess. This is the payoff matrix. It's going to be represented by a 2x2 column row. Each cell, so this is a cell, will represent the corresponding payoffs. Right? The payoffs is the rewards or their cost to their decisions. So we can operate. So here we will have also cooperate. So these are the moves that both parties could do. The snitch, snitch. Okay, so we're just drawing out the 1, 1, 3, 0, 0, 3, 2, 2. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's say Stan decides to cooperate with the police, right? So not cooperate. So let me rewrite this actually. On each other, snitch. They don't snitch. So if let's say Stan doesn't snitch, but Jess snitches, okay. And I think I might have the snitch, snitch, don't snitch. So if Stan snitches, doesn't snitch, okay, he does not snitch. But Jess snitches, says here Jess will get 3 years in jail. So I think I made a mistake here with the payoffs. I wrote it wrong. I apologize. So although perfect. Anyways, recoup. Stan doesn't snitch, so here. If Jess snitches, then Jess will get off scot-free while Stan will get 3 years in jail. However, if Stan decides to snitch and Jess snitches, well, they're both going to go get 2 years in jail. Okay, that's how you're going to read this. So how do you solve this? First, you have to take the perspective of one individual, let's say Jess. Then you're going to condition your move, Jess's move, on what the other player does. So, for example, for Jess, we're going to condition our decision based on what? Based on Stan not snitching. And we're going to choose what's called our best payout. Is it better for me to don't snitch or snitch? Well, because 0 in the sense is better than 1 year in jail, Jess will snitch. So Jess will snitch when Stan doesn't snitch. Perfect. What if Stan snitches? What is Jess's best payoff? Well, it's either don't snitch or snitch. By snitching as well, she gets a lesser sentence. This move is called Jess's dominant strategy. It's a dominant strategy because she will play this move regardless of what the other person does. So now we have to figure out Stan's response. So we're taking the perspective of Stan. Okay. So we're Stan. If Jess decides to not snitch, Stan will choose his highest payout, which is snitch, right? 0 is better than 1 year in jail. What if Jess snitches? Stan's best move is also to snitch. Okay. Stan also has a dominant strategy, to snitch. So Stan and Jess's dominant strategy is to both snitch. And so as a result, when they both play the dominant strategy, this leads us to this cell, which is called the Nash equilibrium. Okay, that is it for pretty much oligopolies. There's a few things I want to talk about very shortly. Is that there is sometimes there is a mutual benefit for both parties to collude, to get together and be like, hey, you know what, let's both not snitch and we'll both be better off, right? But then in this scenario, there's incentive to cheat. And this also applies to firms in oligopoly. For example, OPEC. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So they are a set of several countries that produce oil. They all got together, formed pretty much an alliance, and they set pretty much the amount of quantity of oil they want to produce, and they all buy to that. But there's an incentive to cheat for a small firm. If they were to produce more, right, this would drive down the prices, and then they could steal more market share from the other firms. That is the idea of cheating in the sense of oligopolies when there's what's called occlusion. So that's occlusion. Okay, last but not least are monopolistic competition. So these this market structure shares similar characteristics to a PC firm or PC market and a monopoly market because, well, not because, but yeah, so I think I drew it here. Yeah, so we're here. So if you outline, there are many firms. Okay, they sell differentiated products, and advertising is very important in a monopolistic competition. Profit, so it's greater than zero. Oh, sorry. Profit is equal to zero in long run. They are price setters. And yeah, that's all that comes to my mind. You could think of cafeterias, not cafeterias, yeah, cafeterias in a mall like Eden Center. If you go to the wonderful, beautiful food court, a lot of places to buy food from. However, it kind of looks like a perfectly competitive market because they're all selling food, but it's all high differentiated and all with different price points. And so, oh yeah, no barriers to entry. Okay, so let's draw out a monopoly. Quantity, marginal cost. Bam. Oh my goodness. Yep. This is the PF. This is QF. Nothing crazy. It looks exactly like a monopoly. However, the main distinction here is that in the long run, profit is going to equal to zero. And so if I draw the average total cost here, this firm is earning profit in the short run. And so what's going to happen, just like with a perfectly competitive market, firms are going to enter into this market because why? Low barriers to entry. It's really easy to set up my own business in this market structure. For example, food court. And so what will happen is this is a bit tricky, and I don't like drawing it on the same graph because what ends up happening is that the demand curve for this product will shift to the left. It will shift enough such that the average total cost will be tangent to a point on the demand curve. So super confusing, but don't worry. Here's how I like to draw it. So I start off with my average total cost first. This is the same graph, but I'm drawing it to illustrate this tangency point, because if I were to draw it on this current graph, it would be a little messy. So let's look at the demand. Okay. So this is short run to long run. And so what happens here is if we look at the profit maximizing level of production, which is here, let's call this QF2, right? They will produce at QF2, but the price is PF2. However, the price is also corresponds to the average total cost price. And so since there is no vertical distance, pretty much price P of 2 is equal to average total cost at QF2, then there's no profit to be made, right? And so that's the main distinction between the monopolistic and like an oligopoly. Monopoly in the long run, because of this idea that there are low barriers to entry, and so it's really easy to enter that market and just capture away some of the profits that existing firms are earning. And yeah, and one main takeaway is advertising differentiated products is very, very, very important in this market. A few things I want to make note of here is there is what's called excess capacity between the QF PE. So at this point, this is productive efficiency, right? And so the difference between the quantity at the productively efficient point and QF is what's called excess capacity. And so this firm is purposely not producing the optimal or cost minimizing level of output. Okay. So that is pretty much it for our review. I know it's pretty quick, but it's just to review, just to freshen what you have in your minds regarding the different market structures. So I'll end my video here. Stay tuned. Hopefully I'll try to get another video out, but this is the first like product. So this video can be thought of as a product. So this product will go through many revisions. So this is the very first one, and I will find these types of videos going forward in the future. If you would like to use these videos, maybe next year, or if you're in university. So yeah, anyways, that's pretty much it. I hope you have a great day, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your evening or day. Stop sharing.